Hi class, today I'm talking about the Bible, science, and God. It's a paradigm that if you believe in the Bible, that you don't believe in science, and if you believe in science, you don't believe in the Bible and or possibly God. The Bible, in my opinion, is a credible book. And we could go into apologetics, but that's a whole nother class in itself. But I can say that there are over 25,000 copies or manuscripts of the Bible. It has more copies for a book of antiquity than any other book. The second closest book would be Homer with approximately 650 copies. Also, how accurate the copies are from the originals dated is based on how close the closest copy is, and a bulk of it is within 100 years of the originals for the Bible. So let's see what the Bible says, where the scientific statements are said in the Bible, and if it coincides or correlates or contradicts what science has to say. So I will first go over Jeremiah 33:22. As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, nor the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the descendants of David, my servant, and the Levites who minister to me. Here, the Bible's comparing the number of stars, equivalent, basically, to the number of grains of sand in the sea. Obviously, even back then, everybody would know the number of grains of sand is a lot, but how would they know with the naked eye? It's approximated that you can see 3,000 stars in the sky. 3,000 is nowhere near with the number of grains of sand. So this insight that the Bible has to equate the two is quite remarkable. For powerful telescopes nowadays, it can see approximately 10 to the 21st stars. The number of grains of sand is approximated at 10 to the 25th stars. They're very close in approximation, and maybe even we'll get closer someday with more powerful telescopes. The next verse is 1 Corinthians 15:41. Here it says, there's one glory of the sun, another glory of the moon, and another glory for the stars. For one star differs from another star in glory. The Bible is saying that all stars are different. It's like our fingerprints. There's no two people with the same fingerprints in the world. And the Bible is saying that there's no two of the same stars. Well, science has proved that their spectra, there's no two same stars. Every single star in the universe is different with a different spectra. Another remarkable insight the Bible has, and consistent with science. Job 26:7 says, he stretches out the north over empty space. He hangs the earth on nothing. So here the Bible says the earth is suspended. It's hanging on nothing. So that's another insight that the Bible knew without technology. Quite remarkable also. And the last one, Isaiah 40:22, it says, it is he, which is God, referring to God, who sits above the circle of the earth. The circle. So even up to Columbus's time, discovering America at 1492, they believed that the earth was flat. If you sailed far out into the ocean enough, the ships will fall off. So the Bible, had they just listened to the Bible, that it was a circle, then they could have saved themselves a lot of years. Also, they also believed that the earth was the center of the world. And it makes sense because even nowadays, if you look throughout, you see the moon, the stars, the sun. It looks like we're the center and everything's around us. And that's what they believed. That's what science back then believed. Nowhere, and we know that's not to be true, but in the Bible, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that the earth was the center of the universe. And it could have easily said that. Next one. So let's go on to creationism or evolution. The Bible believes in creationism. God created everything. And evolution believes that it's by chance. So let's go to the next one. And let's see what scientists have to say regarding creationism or evolution. So let's start off with, what are the odds of life beginning and existing in the universe? What are the odds of that happening? Roger Penrose, he's a famous British mathematician. He calculated that the odds of beginning in the entire universe, including the Earth, is 1 divided by 10, which is pretty small. But then you raise it to the power of 10 and then to another power of 123. That's virtually zero. So he's saying it's zero chance that life began in the universe. He's a great mathematician from Britain. But let's not completely trust what the British have to say. Let's see what our American scientists have to say. Dr. Hugh Ross, he's an astrophysicist that assesses that there's 148 parameters required for life, human life, to happen on Earth. He says the odds of that happening are greater than the multiples of the stars in the universe. So multiples of the stars of the universe. So he's virtually saying it's 0 too. It's like the odds of winning the lottery, multiplying it by 1,000,000. So both these scientists at the top of their academia say it's impossible. Next one. So let's see. Owen Gingerich, he's a Harvard astronomy professor. He says, quote, "A common sense and satisfying interpretation of a world suggests a designing hand of a super intelligence." So clearly he says that if you use and then extrapolate the data, the scientific data, there's no other way to see it than that there's a super intelligence. And also Robin Collins, an American scientist, he has 3 degrees and 2 doctorates in mathematics, physics, and philosophy. And he says, quote, "The extraordinary fine-tuning of the laws and constants of nature, their beauty, their discoverability, their intelligibility, all of this combines to make the God hypothesis the most reasonable choice we have. All other theories fall short." So he's saying that there has to be a God to explain. All scientific theories explaining the origin falls way short. Next one. Okay, Dean Kenyon, he's America's leading evolutionist. So he believes in evolutionism. But upon the discovery of DNA, so he says that the basic premise of an unguided natural process cannot explain the origin, but sees molecular genetics as compelling evidence for a purposeful design. So here we have an evolutionist, a chemical evolutionist that now believes in a grand design based on DNA. Also, Alan Rex Sandage, famous astronomer that was dubbed the grand old man of cosmology by the New York Times, he says, "It was my science that drove me to the conclusion that the world is much more complicated than can be explained by science. It was only through the supernatural that I could understand the mystery of existence." He doesn't believe in God, but he believes in the supernatural due to science. Science is pointing the way to God. Next one. Okay, so let's hear what Nobel Prize winners, they are at the very top winning their Nobel Prize. So Dr. Arne Penzias, this is one of my favorite statements from scientists. He says, he's an astrophysicist. He says, "I invite you to examine the snapshot provided by half a century's worth of astrophysical data and see what the pieces of the universe actually looks like. In order to achieve consistency with our observations, we must assume not only creation of matter and energy out of nothing, but creation of space and time as well. The best data we have are exactly what I would have predicted had I had nothing to go on but the first 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole." So here he says that you can extrapolate all the scientific data together and it brings you no closer to explaining the origin of the world and life than the Bible. No closer. Next one. Here's another Nobel Prize, Francis Crick. He's an atheist that won a Nobel Prize for co-discovery of DNA. He says, you back up a little bit. Okay. "An honest man, armed with all the knowledge available to us now, could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions would had to have been to satisfy to get it going. So Francis Crick, he's an atheist, but now with the discovery of DNA, he is amazed at the design. He knows that it had to have taken a supernatural power to design DNA. DNA, by the way, is our informational storehouse. It makes our amino acids that have to be linked together in the right bonds, in the right sequence, to make the right protein, and even that protein has to be overlapped, twisted. It has to be done exactly right. All those processes by chance, quite impossible. So he acknowledges that. So now we go to evolutionists. Their biggest strong point is radiometric dating. A type of radiometric dating is carbon-14. Carbon-14 dates what used to be living organisms now are dead, and they like the dinosaurs, they date the dinosaurs' bones as millions of years old. Now, carbon-14 dating, how it works is that the nitrogen in the air, they combine with the neutrons in the air to form carbon-14. Carbon-14 is highly unstable, and over 5,700 years, it's approximated that its half-life of 5,700 years, half the carbon-14 will dissipate. So when a living organism dies, it no longer has that carbon-14 coming into its body. So the lesser amount of carbon-14, the older it is. But the carbon-14 dating system has to have assumptions, and these assumptions are false. They are not scientific. The first thing is that they assume that the carbon-14 dating, so carbon-14 is a ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12. They're saying that that is consistent throughout millions and thousands of years. And it's proven not to be true just by the Earth's magnetic field. In the last, every century, science has shown that the Earth's magnetic field has gotten 5% weaker. And so in the past 100 years, say in 1850, it's 10% weaker. The Earth's magnetic field keeps the cosmic waves out. And it's the cosmic waves that interact in the atmosphere to make the neutrons, which makes the carbon-14. So just in the last 100 years alone, the Earth's magnetic field has been weaker, which allows more cosmic rays, which allows more carbon-14. So we can't even determine the amount of carbon-14 in the air within the last 1,000 years, let alone the last tens of thousands and millions of years. So their process using the concept of uniformitarianism is false. It's not what science is based on, a direct observation. They're just assuming. Also, Noah's flood buried massive vegetation, and with the vegetation that they buried, it clearly shows that there's much more vegetation than nowadays, which means that there was much more carbon back then. So just as once again, it shows that the C14, C12 ratio is not consistent. But the most important hole in Dr. Libby, he's the discoverer of the dating, carbon-14 dating, is his own discovery that the C14 to C12 ratio is not in equilibrium in this Earth. He determined that if the Earth started with no C14, C12 in the atmosphere, it would take 30,000 years to equilibrize. He has found that it's not in equilibrium, which points to a younger Earth. Because if the Earth was millions or even billions of years old, what scientists say, it would have been in equilibrium a long, long time ago. But it's still not in equilibrium. But he disregards this one finding that he himself found. So how old are dinosaurs? They also like to point out that the minerals in the dinosaurs, how it became fossilized, it took millions of years. Science has also proven that it only takes a couple of weeks for bones to be permineralized. to grab all that mineral. So, but on top of that, the dinosaurs, a lot of a massive amount of dinosaur bones are not permineralized. So if they're not permineralized, there's nothing to protect them. If they are millions of years old with no protection, they should have disintegrated a very long time ago, but they still exist. Coal. Coal is the biggest geological phenomenon that proves Noah's flood. The evolutionist theory of how coal is created is through swamps. They say vegetation over millions of years build up in the swamps to form coal, but none of it makes sense, and I'll point out the loopholes. The coal deposits, and some deposits are up to 3 miles thick. So that means the plants would have to be compressed and growing on top of each other for 3 miles. It absolutely makes no sense. Also, the plant life in coal do not grow in swamps, so they have found a massive amount of plant life that makes up coal that cannot exist in swampland. They found tree trunks, they found plant life from tops of mountains that there's no way they were in swamps. But it does prove Noah's flood, in that it would have taken a catastrophic flood to carry all that vegetation into a localized area and then cover it with sediment to deplete it of oxygen so it can actually turn into coal. Also, the swamps have to, if it was a swamp theory that was correct, they would have to sink precisely, that it doesn't sink too quickly to drown the plants, or too slowly the plants would grow above the swamp and then decay and decompose and not be able to form the coal. So let's get back to the first law of thermodynamics. The first law of one of the premises is matter cannot be created nor destroyed. Just based on this premise alone, scientists cannot explain the origin. They may have their Big Bang, but the Big Bang could be 1 second after what the real story is. 1 second after the real story, they can't explain. They cannot explain how matter, time, space was created in the first place. The Big Bang does not explain that. They can't even get off the starting blocks. Next one. So I saved the creme de la creme for last. Albert Einstein. He's known as the most well-known genius and the best scientist of all time. E equals MC squared, everybody knows that. And a lot of today's technology, the computer, phone, came from Albert Einstein, his theories and inventions. But Einstein says, let's see what he has to say. He says, everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man, and one in the face of which we with our modest power must feel humble. He's not saying there's a God, but he's saying there's a spirit much greater than us. He acknowledges that science cannot explain the origins. He acknowledges that we must humble ourselves and understand why we are humbled, because we cannot explain everything. Science falls short. Finally, I'd like to go back to the Bible with Romans 1:20. The Bible says, for ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and the sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, eternal power, and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. So the Bible says and points out all the amazing things in the universe that cannot be explained. So we just need to humble ourselves and realize that it can not be explained, and that we just have to open our eyes to what God has already created. Thank you. So in conclusion, I have found that the old paradigm is no longer there. There's a new paradigm shift. Science is not disproving what the Bible, as I have shown you, it says. Science is now proving what the Bible says. In fact, science lags behind what the Bible already knew. So Christians now they don't have to be afraid of science. In fact, science is the Bible's friend now. It's clearly proving, as there are more discoveries, what the Bible already knew. Thank you.